In the winter of 1878, high in the Sangre de Cristo Mountains of northern New Mexico, a man found something in the snow, and that discovery would change everything. Caleb Thornton, known to the few souls who crossed his path as Bear, moved through the frozen wilderness with the practiced silence of someone who had become part of it. At 32 years old, he stood 6'3", broad-shouldered and thick with muscle earned through a decade of survival. His brown beard fell nearly to his chest, wild and untamed. His hair, long and tied back with leather cord, bore streaks of early gray. A scar ran down his left cheek, a reminder of the world he had fled. He was checking his trap lines that morning, boots crunching through knee-deep snow, when he heard it. A sound so faint he almost missed it. A cry. Weak. Human. Bear stopped. Listened. The mountain held its breath. There. Again. Coming from the direction of the frozen creek. He ran. Not the careful, measured movement of a hunter, but the desperate sprint of someone who knew what it meant to be dying in the cold. His breath came in white clouds. His legs burned. He followed the sound until he saw them. Footprints. Staggering. Bloody. At the edge of the creek, half buried in fresh snow, lay a woman. She was Apache, young, maybe 25. Her dark hair spread across the white ground like spilled ink. Her dress, torn and blood-stained, offered no protection against the cold. One hand clutched a piece of cloth, soaked red. The other lay open, palm up, as if reaching for help that had never come. Bear did not hesitate. 10 years alone had not made him heartless. He stripped off his thick bearskin coat and wrapped it around her. She was light, dangerously so. He checked her quickly. A stab wound in her left shoulder. Her ankle swollen, possibly broken. Frostbite starting on her fingers. "You're not dying here," he said to her unconscious form. "Not on my mountain, on—" He lifted her carefully, cradling her against his chest. She did not stir. He began the mile walk back to his cabin, moving as fast as the terrain allowed. Behind him the snow fell heavier, erasing their tracks, erasing evidence, erasing the past. Bear did not know it then, but the woman in his arms would lead him back to the world he had spent 10 years avoiding. And this time, he would not run. He would fight. The cabin appeared through the snowfall like a promise. Solid, safe. Built with his own hands from trees he had felled himself. Smoke rose from the chimney. Inside, the fire still burned. He kicked the door open and brought her in. The warmth hit them both. He laid her on his bed, the only bed, covered in thick furs. She was shivering now. That was good. Shivering meant alive. Bear moved with purpose. He had learned basic medicine from necessity. 10 winters alone taught a man many things. He heated water, gathered herbs, found clean cloth. He washed the wound in her shoulder first. Deep, but the blade had missed vital areas. He packed it with a paste of yarrow and pine resin, then bound it tight. Her ankle he wrapped with strips of hide soaked in cold water to reduce the swelling. She slept through all of it, or was unconscious. He was not sure which. When he finished, he sat by the fire and waited. The cabin smelled of wood smoke, cured leather, and drying herbs. Outside, the wind howled. Inside, silence stretched between heartbeats. An hour passed, then another. Finally, she stirred. Her eyes opened suddenly, wide with terror. She sat up fast, too fast, gasping. Her hand reached for something that was not there. A weapon. An escape. Bear raised both hands slowly. "Whoa! Easy there. You're safe." She stared at him, taking in his size, his beard, his scars. Her eyes darted to the door, to the window, calculating distances. Bear stayed where he was, near the fire, several feet away. "I found you in the snow. You were hurt." She said nothing. Her jaw was set, her breathing shallow. "I cleaned your wounds," Bear continued, keeping his voice low and steady. "You need rest. And water." He stood slowly, moving to the corner where he kept a tin cup. He filled it from the bucket of melted snow water. He walked forward 3 steps, set the cup on the floor between them, then backed away again. "Drink. You need strength." She watched him, still calculating, still ready to fight or flee. But after a long moment, she reached for the cup. Her hand trembled. She brought it to her lips and drank. Slowly at first, then deeper. Bear nodded. "Good. I'll make stew. You hungry?" She nodded once. Small. Cautious. Bear moved to the pot hanging near the fire. He ladled in dried elk meat, wild onions, tubers he had stored for winter. He worked quietly, giving her space, giving her time to understand she was not a prisoner here. When he went outside to fetch more wood, he heard her move, quick and desperate. When he came back in, she was standing by the table, his hunting knife in her hand. He stopped in the doorway, looked at her, looked at the knife. Then he smiled. Just a little. "If you're going to stab me, wait till after dinner. I make a good elk stew." She stared at him, searching his face for mockery or threat. Found neither. Slowly, carefully, she set the knife down. Bear nodded. "Fair enough." He went back to cooking. She lowered herself back onto the bed, watching him with eyes that had seen too much cruelty to trust kindness easily. The stew bubbled. The fire crackled. Outside, the mountains stood watch. "You don't have to tell me your story," Bear said after a while, not looking at her. "Not yet. Not ever, if you don't want to. But you should know mine starts with running, from a father who had fists for words. I was 22 when I left. Came up here, stayed. 10 years now." He stirred the pot. "The silence up here, it heals things, slowly, but it heals." When the stew was ready, he poured a bowl for her, but she did not reach for it. Her eyes were on the bowl, then on him, suspicious. Bear understood. He took a spoonful from her bowl and ate it himself, then another, then a third. See? Not poison. Only then did she take the bowl. She ate slowly, carefully, but she ate, and Bear turned away, giving her the dignity of privacy. That night, as the fire burned low, Bear laid out his bedroll by the hearth. "You take the bed," he said. "I'll sleep here." She frowned. "Why?" "Because if I sleep on that bed, it'll collapse. I'm too heavy." He stretched out, testing the bedroll. "Besides, I snore. You'd throw me out anyway." For the first time, something shifted in her eyes. Not quite trust, but not quite fear either. She lay down, pulling the furs close. Bear settled by the fire, his back to her, giving her space. The cabin fell into silence, but it was not the heavy silence of threat. It was the quiet of two people who understood what it meant to survive. In the darkness, she watched him, this mountain man with his wild beard and scarred face. He had not touched her beyond necessity, had not asked questions, had not demanded anything. She whispered in Apache, so quiet he could not hear, "You are different." And for the first time in years, she slept without nightmares. Morning came cold and bright. Bear woke first, as always. He built up the fire, started coffee, began making cornbread in his cast-iron skillet, the familiar rituals of survival. She woke to the smell of food and watched him work. His hands were large and calloused, but they moved with surprising care, precise, practiced. "Morning," he said without turning. "How's the shoulder?" "Better," she answered. Her first word to him. Bear nodded. "Good. You heal fast." He brought her coffee and cornbread, set it within reach, stepped back. "Thank you," she said. "You're welcome." "My name is Ayanna." Bear met her eyes directly. "Caleb," he said, "but folks used to call me Bear." "Why Bear?" He gestured at his coat hanging by the door, the massive bearskin. "Killed it my first winter up here, with a knife. Nearly killed me too. After that, Seemed like the mountain wanted me to have its name. Ayanna almost smiled. Almost. 3 days passed. Ayanna grew stronger. Her shoulder healed quickly, the Apache medicine in her blood serving her well. She watched Bear work, watched him repair traps, carve new tools, prepare food. Everything he did was deliberate, nothing wasted. On the 4th morning, she saw him trying to wrap a cut on his hand. He had caught it on a trap spring. The bandage kept slipping. "Let me," she said. Bear looked surprised, but extended his hand. Ayanna unwrapped his clumsy attempt. She went to her small bundle, the one she had been clutching when he found her, and pulled out dried herbs. She mixed them with water, creating a paste. She cleaned the wound properly, applied the medicine, then wrapped it with expert precision. "You know medicine?" Bear asked. "Apache women learn. My grandmother taught me." Bear examined the bandage. Tight, clean, professional. "You did good. Better than me." Ayanna allowed herself a small smile. "The traps," she said later that day. "Can you teach me?" "Why?" "I need to survive. When I leave." Bear was quiet for a long moment. "All right," he said finally. "Come on." They walked out into the melting snow. Spring was coming, slow but certain. Bear showed her how to read animal tracks in the mud, how to set a snare without triggering it yourself, how to choose the right location. Ayanna learned quickly. She asked smart questions, saw patterns he had not pointed out. "You're sharp," Bear said, impressed. "Most people take weeks to see this." On the walk back she asked, "Why do you live alone?" Bear was silent for a long time. "Long story." "I have time." He looked at her, really looked, saw someone who might understand. "My father," he said slowly. "He wasn't kind. After my mother died, he got worse. Drank. Hit. I left when I was 22. Been here 10 years. Ayanna nodded slowly. "My father, too. He drank after we lost our land. He hit my mother. Hit me. When mother died, he sold me to a white man. $50. Bear stopped walking, turned to face her. His jaw was tight. Anger lived there, but controlled, banked like coals. He said nothing, just nodded, understanding passing between them without words. They walked the rest of the way in silence, but it was not empty silence. It was the silence of two people who had survived the same kind of darkness. That afternoon, the mountain's peace shattered. Horses, 2 of them. Bear heard them before he saw them. He grabbed his rifle, moved to the door. 2 men rode into the clearing. The first was tall and thin, dressed in a black vest despite the cold. His face was angular, his eyes calculating. The second was thick and brutal-looking, a pistol on his hip. "Afternoon," the thin man called out. His voice was smooth, too smooth. "Didn't know anyone lived here." "I do," Bear answered. "Can I help you?" The thin man dismounted, pulled papers from his saddlebag. "I'm Travis Kincaid, land surveyor. This area is being mapped for settlement." "I've been here 10 years. Kincaid smiled without warmth. "Squatters' rights don't apply to federal land, friend. This isn't federal land. Not anymore. Railroads coming through. This land is open for claim." Bear's grip tightened on his rifle. "I'm not leaving." Kincaid's eyes drifted past Bear to the cabin door, where Ayanna stood, watching. "That a squaw?" Kincaid's smile widened. "Runaway?" Bear stepped to block his view. "She's under my protection." "Is she now?" Kincaid looked at his companion. "There's reward money for returning runaways, Boone." Boone's hand moved to his pistol. Bear chambered a round in his rifle. The sound echoed across the clearing. "She's not going anywhere." Kincaid raised a hand. "Easy, friend. We're civilized men. I'll be back with the sheriff. We'll sort this legally." He remounted his horse, tipped his hat with mock politeness. Enjoy your last few days of peace, mountain man." They rode away, but the threat hung in the air like smoke. Bear stood watching until they disappeared. Then he turned back to the cabin. Ayanna was already packing her small bundle. "I should leave. I bring trouble." "No." Bear's voice was firm. "This is my land. I won't run. Not again. They will use the law against you. Then we'll use the law too." Ayanna looked at him, saw determination in his eyes, the same determination that had kept him alive for 10 years alone. "You do not know how to fight in towns." "No," Bear admitted, "but I'll learn. I can help." "How?" "The man who bought me lived in Taos. I know that town. I know who has power there. I know the streets, the people." She met his eyes. "I can guide you through that world, if you will fight with me in this one." Bear looked at her, at this Apache woman who had survived being sold, enslaved, and hunted, who had escaped into winter mountains and nearly died, who was offering not to run, but to fight. He extended his hand. "Partners?" Ayanna took it. Her grip was strong. "Partners." That night, they sat by the fire making plans. The cabin felt smaller now, but not in a bad way. It felt like a war room, a place where survivors became fighters. Outside, the last snow of winter fell. Inside, something new was being born. Not romance, not dependency, but alliance, partnership. Two people who had been broken by the world deciding they would not break again. Bear sharpened his knife. Ayanna sorted her medicines. And high in the Sangre de Cristo Mountains, on land that had been stolen and claimed and stolen again, two people prepared to take back what was theirs, not with violence alone, but with something more dangerous: truth. Dawn broke cold over the mountains. Bear and Ayanna prepared for the journey to Taos in silence, the kind of silence that comes before battle. He wore his cleanest buckskin jacket, though it still bore the marks of 10 years in the wilderness. His beard was still wild, his hair still long. He was a mountain man, and no amount of grooming would change that. He would not pretend to be something he was not. Ayanna wore a simple dress, plain and borrowed. She wrapped a shawl around her shoulders and pulled it up to partially cover her face. In town, being Apache meant being a target. Being a runaway Apache meant being prey. Bear saddled his horse, a sturdy gray mare he had traded furs for years back. He looked at Ayanna. "You sure about this?" She met his eyes. "No, but staying here means dying slow. I would rather die fighting." "We're not dying," Bear said. "Either way." They rode down from the mountain as the sun climbed. 3 hours through pine forests and rocky trails. Ayanna guided them, pointing out shortcuts she had learned during her years of captivity when Morrison would send her on errands. Every rock, every turn held a memory, most of them dark. As they descended, she told him more. About Garrett Morrison, the merchant who had bought her. About his house on the hill overlooking Taos. About the locked room where he kept her. About the 7 years she had endured before she found the courage and the opportunity to drug his evening whiskey and run. "He nearly caught me," she said, her voice flat, factual. "Sent 3 men. One of them put a knife in my shoulder as I reached the trees. I kept running, into the mountains, into the snow. I thought I would die free rather than live as his slave." Bear's jaw tightened. His hands gripped the reins harder. "Morrison still in town?" "Yes. He is powerful. Friends with Kincaid, friends with the sheriff, friends with men who matter." "Then we avoid him." "We cannot avoid him forever. Taos is small. He will know I am there within hours." "Let him know," Bear said. "Let him try something. I'm ready." Ayanna looked at him, at this man who had lived alone for a decade, who had no reason to help her, who was risking everything anyway. "Why are you doing this, Bear?" He was quiet for a long time. The horse's hooves clopped steadily on the rocky path. Finally he spoke. Because when I ran from my father, no one helped me. No one stood up. I was alone. And being alone like that, it does something to you. Hardens parts that should stay soft. I don't want that for you. And maybe helping you helps me too. Maybe it reminds me I'm still human." They rode the rest of the way in silence, but it was comfortable now. The silence of people who understood each other. Taos appeared below them as they rounded the final ridge. Adobe buildings clustered together, wood smoke rising from 100 chimneys. The sound reached them before the sight fully formed. Hammers, voices, horses, wagons, the endless noise of civilization pressing forward. Bear tensed in his saddle. Too many people, too much noise. After 10 years of mountain silence, it felt like an assault. Ayanna noticed. "Welcome back to civilization, Bear." He looked at her and saw she was tense too. Her hands white-knuckled on the reins, her breathing shallow. "We do this together," he said. "You're not alone." She nodded. "Neither are you." They rode into town mid-morning. People stared. A massive bearded mountain man and an Apache woman riding side by side drew attention. Some looks were curious. Some were hostile. Bear ignored them all. He had learned in the mountains that predators smell fear, so he showed none. The land office sat on the main plaza, a sturdy building with a wooden sign painted in careful letters. Bear dismounted, tied his horse, then helped Ayanna down, not because she needed help, but because he wanted anyone watching to see that he treated her with respect. Inside, the office smelled of paper and ink and dust. A man sat at a large desk covered in maps and documents. He was perhaps 55, with gray hair and intelligent eyes. He looked up as they entered. "Help you?" he asked. Then he saw Ayanna, and his expression shifted. Recognition flickered there, and something else. Sympathy. "Mr. Whitmore?" Bear asked. "That's right." "My name is Caleb Thornton. I need to talk about land rights." Whitmore's eyes moved from Bear to Ayanna and back. He stood, walked to the door, looked outside, then closed it firmly. "Sit down, both of you." They sat. Bear laid out the situation. The cabin, the 10 years, Kincaid's claim, the threats. He spoke plainly, without embellishment. Facts only. Whitmore listened, took notes. His face remained neutral, but his pen moved faster when Bear mentioned Kincaid's name. When Bear finished, Whitmore set down his pen. "Kincaid's been doing this for 2 years now. He finds unclaimed land, files false claims, then sells to the railroad at 10 times the value. He's taken 15 properties that I know of." "Can you stop him?" "Legally? It's difficult. He has backing from powerful men." Whitmore paused. "Men like Garrett Morrison." Ayanna's breath caught. Whitmore heard it. He looked at her directly for the first time. "You know Morrison?" "I was his property," she said quietly. "Until I escaped." Whitmore's face changed. The professional mask fell away. Something raw and pained showed through. He stood, walked to the window, looked out at the town. "My wife was Navajo," he said finally. "Elena. She died 3 years ago. Disease from contaminated water on the reservation. Morrison was contracted to provide clean water. Federal money. He took it. Did nothing. Pocketed the difference." He turned back to them. "I wanted justice, but I'm one man. One voice. Morrison has friends in Santa Fe, friends in Washington. I've been gathering evidence, but it's not enough. I need more. I need proof that people can see and cannot deny." Bear leaned forward. "What kind of proof?" "Documents. Kincaid keeps records in his office, detailed records. If we could get them, if we could show the pattern of fraud, we might have a case." "I'll get them." Whitmore shook his head. "That's breaking and entering. That's jail time if you're caught." Bear smiled grimly. "I've survived 10 winters in mountains that kill men in days. I think I can survive one night in an office." Whitmore studied him, saw the determination, saw the competence. "You'll need help. Someone who knows the town, Who can watch your back?" "He has me," Ayanna said. Both men looked at her. She sat straighter. "I know Taos. Every street, every alley. I spent 7 years learning every way in and out of places. I can get him there. Get him out." Whitmore nodded slowly. "All right. But if this goes wrong, I never heard of this plan. Understood?" "Understood," Bear said. They stood, shook hands. As they turned to leave, Whitmore added, "There's a cantina, Maria's place, 2 blocks south. She knew Elena. She knows what Morrison is. You'll be safe there." Outside, the noon sun was bright, too bright after the dimness of the office. Bear squinted. Ayanna guided him through the streets, moving with confidence now. This was her territory. She knew it like Bear knew his mountains. Maria's cantina sat on a corner, small but clean. The smell of cooking chili and fresh tortillas filled the air. Bear's stomach rumbled. He had not realized how hungry he was. A woman emerged from the kitchen, 45, dark hair braided, an apron dusted with flour. She saw them and smiled. Then she saw Ayanna and froze. "Dios mío," Maria whispered. She rushed forward. "Ayanna, is that you?" The 2 women embraced. Maria held Ayanna at arm's length, examining her. "I thought you were dead. Morrison said you ran and died in the snow." "Almost," Ayanna said. "He saved me." She gestured to Bear. Maria turned to Bear. Her eyes were wet. "Thank you, Señor. Thank you for bringing her back." "She saved herself," Bear said. "I just kept her from freezing." Maria ushered them to a corner table away from windows. She brought food without asking. Pozole, warm and rich with pork and hominy. Fresh tortillas. Coffee strong enough to wake the dead. Bear ate like he had not eaten in weeks. Real cooking. Spices. Care. It had been so long. Maria sat with them. "You are in danger, both of you. Morrison has men looking. And the sheriff, Reeves, he is Morrison's dog." "We know," Ayanna said. "We are going to fight." Maria's eyes widened. "Fight? How? Morrison owns this town." "Not the whole town," Bear said. "Whitmore is with us. You're with us. That's a start." Maria looked at him, at his scarred face and wild beard, at the quiet confidence in his eyes. "You are either very brave or very stupid, mountain man." "Probably both," Bear admitted. Then he smiled slightly. "But I'm also very stubborn, and I'm told that counts for something." Despite everything, Maria laughed. "I have a room, upstairs. You can stay. It is safer than the street." "I appreciate it, ma'am, but I'm too big for most beds." Maria's laugh came easier now. "My husband was grande too, big like you. The bed held him. It will hold you." "Then I'll try not to break it." That evening, after they had eaten and the sun had set, Bear and Ayanna sat in the upstairs room. 2 small bedrooms separated by a thin wall. Bear could hear Ayanna moving in the next room, pacing, restless. Then he heard something else, quiet crying, the kind that tries to stay hidden. He stood, knocked gently on her door. "You all right?" The crying stopped. A pause. Then, "I am fine." "No, you're not." A longer pause. Then the door opened. Ayanna's eyes were red. "I am sorry. I am weak tonight." "You're not weak. Come on, talk to me." They sat in the hallway, the single oil lamp casting long shadows. And Ayanna told him everything. Not the facts she had shared before, but the feeling of it, the weight of it. She spoke of her father, Neshoba, once a proud warrior, once a man who made her feel safe. Then the white men came, took the land, forced the Apache onto reservations. Her father could not bear the humiliation. He drank. He raged. He struck out at the only people he still had power over, his wife, his daughter. When Ayanna's mother died, something in Neshoba broke completely. He sold his only daughter for $50 and a bottle of whiskey. Sold her to Morrison like she was livestock. 7 years. 7 years of being locked in that room, of being Morrison's possession, of believing she deserved it because her own father had not wanted her. "I thought I was worthless," she said. Her voice was steady now. The crying had passed. This was just truth. "I thought I must be, if my own blood sold me." Bear listened, did not interrupt, did not offer empty comfort, just listened. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke. "My father beat me from the time I was 8 until I was big enough to hit back. I was 22. Took me 14 years to get big enough, strong enough, angry enough." He looked at his hands. "I thought about killing him, thought about it a lot, but I didn't. I just left, ran to the mountains, and for 10 years I told myself I was free. But you know what? I wasn't, because I spent those 10 years proving I didn't need anyone, proving I could survive alone. And that's just another kind of prison." He met her eyes. "Morrison will pay for what he did to you. I promise. Not because I'm some hero, but because it's right. Because you're my friend, and I don't have many of those. I won't lose this one." He placed his hand on her shoulder, not possessive, not controlling, just there, present, steady. Ayanna cried again. But this time not from pain, from something else, from being seen, from being valued, from mattering. Maria found them like that an hour later. She brought hot chocolate, thick and sweet. They sat together, the three of them. Survivors in a world that had tried to break them, tired, scared, but not alone. "Tomorrow," Bear said, "I'll get those documents, whatever it takes." Maria crossed herself. "Vaya con Dios, Bear." "Not sure God wants anything to do with me, ma'am, but I appreciate the thought." Maria smiled sadly. God loves bears too, even the stubborn ones. Midnight came cold. Bear moved through the darkness like he moved through forest. Silent, purposeful. Every shadow was cover. Every sound was information. Kincaid's office sat above the general store, accessed by an outside staircase. No guards. Why would there be? Who would dare steal from Kincaid? Who would dare challenge Morrison? Bear would. He climbed the back wall, using ledges and windowsills. His fingers found purchase where others would find only smooth adobe. The mountains had taught him to climb, to trust his strength, to move with confidence even when the drop below meant death. The office window was locked but old. Bear used his knife to slip the latch. The window opened with barely a sound. He slid inside. The office was dark except for moonlight through dirty windows. A desk dominated the room. Filing cabinets lined one wall. A small safe sat in the corner. Bear went to the safe first. It was locked, as expected. He knelt, drew his knife. The lock was cheap, designed to look secure more than to actually be secure. Bear had learned many things in his years alone. One was how to open locks. He had taught himself on his father's liquor cabinet when he was 12. Before he learned that some locks could not be picked, this one could. 3 minutes. 4. Then a click. The safe opened. Inside were documents. Contracts, maps, letters. Bear took them all, shoved them inside his coat. Then he heard it. Footsteps. Outside. Coming up the stairs. Voices. 2 men. One was Kincaid. Bear would recognize that oily smoothness anywhere. "Tomorrow, we evict that mountain man," Kincaid was saying. "I want that land. Prime location once the railroad comes through." The other voice was deeper, rougher. "And the squaw? Return her to Morrison. He'll pay good money. Wants to make an example of her." They were at the door, turning the key. Bear moved. Not to the window. No time. He slid behind the filing cabinet, pressed himself flat, controlled his breathing, made himself small despite his size. The door opened. Lamplight spilled in. "Just need to get the survey maps," Kincaid said. "Morrison wants to see them before we present to the railroad." "He paying you extra for the squaw?" $100. 50 for us each." They crossed to the desk. So close. If they turned, if they looked, they would see Bear's boots beneath the cabinet. But they did not look. They were confident, arrogant, sure of their power. They found the maps, rolled them, turned to leave. "What about the safe?" the other man asked. "What about it? No one knows the combination but me." "Still open, though, see?" Kincaid stopped, looked, saw the safe door ajar. For a moment, time stopped. Then Kincaid lunged for the safe, saw it empty. His face went white, then red. "Someone's been here. The documents. They're gone. Who would—" "That mountain man. Has to be. Find him." But Bear was already gone, out the window while their backs were turned, down the wall, into the shadows, running through alleys Ayanna had mapped for him earlier, left, right, left again, back to Maria's by a route no one could follow. He burst through the back door. Ayanna was waiting, tense as a drawn bow. "Did you get them?" Bear pulled the documents from his coat, spread them on the table. "I got them." Maria crossed herself again. "Dios mío, they will come." "Let them," Bear said, but his heart was pounding, his hands shaking slightly from adrenaline. "We have what we need." Ayanna grabbed his arm. "You are bleeding." He looked down, his shoulder. He must have torn it climbing. He had not even felt it. "Sit," she commanded. She got her medicines, cleaned the wound, bandaged it properly. Her hands were steady, professional, but Bear could feel them trembling slightly. "You did good tonight," she said quietly. "Brave but stupid." "Stupid is kind of my specialty," Bear admitted. Then more seriously, "Thank you. For the map. For watching. For everything." "We are partners," Ayanna said simply. "Partners watch each other's backs." They worked through the night. Bear, Ayanna, Maria, and Whitmore, who arrived before dawn. They sorted through the documents, found the pattern. 15 properties, all claimed through fraud, all sold to the railroad, Kincaid and Morrison splitting the profits. Names, dates, amounts, all written in Kincaid's own hand. "This is it," Whitmore said. His voice shook. "This is enough. We can take this to Judge Keene. He's one of the few honest men left in New Mexico." "When?" Bear asked. "Tomorrow. I'll file formal charges today. Request immediate hearing. Keene will grant it. He has to." The sun rose over Taos, golden light on adobe walls, a new day, a chance at justice. But in his mansion on the hill, Garrett Morrison was waking to news that would make him very, very angry. And angry, powerful men were dangerous men. The war was not over. It had only just begun. Morning light had barely touched the adobe walls of Taos when Bear made his way to the church. The old mission sat at the edge of town, its bells silent, its walls crumbling in places, but still standing. Like everything else in this territory, it survived through stubbornness more than grace. The heavy wooden door creaked as Bear pushed it open. Inside, the air was cool and smelled of candle wax and old incense. A man knelt at the altar, head bowed in prayer. He wore simple brown robes, his white beard reaching nearly to his chest. Bear waited. Respect for the sacred was something the mountain had taught him. Not religion exactly, but reverence, the understanding that some moments should not be interrupted. Finally the priest crossed himself and stood. He turned and saw Bear. If the sight of a massive bearded mountain man in his church surprised him, he did not show it. "Hijo," the priest said, his accent thick with Spain. "You need confession?" "No, Padre. I need alliance." The old priest's eyebrows rose. He gestured to a pew. "Sit. Tell me." Bear sat. The wood creaked under his weight. He told the priest about Kincaid, about Morrison, about the stolen land, and the pattern of corruption that was choking the life from honest people. He told him about Ayanna, about 7 years of captivity, about escape and survival and the decision to fight back. The priest listened. His weathered face showed nothing, but his eyes were sharp. When Bear finished, the old man was quiet for a long moment. "I know these men," he said finally. "They are, how do you say, lobos in sheep's clothing. Wolves." "Will you testify?" Bear asked. "If we go to court, will you speak against them?" The priest's face clouded. "Morrison donates much to the church. New roof last year, new bells before that." "Blood money," Bear said flatly. The priest flinched. Then slowly he nodded. "See, you are right. Blood money. I have told myself many lies to accept it, that the church needs funds, that God can sanctify even tainted gold, but lies do not become truth just because a priest speaks them." He met Bear's eyes. "I will testify. Before God and man, I will speak truth." Bear let out a breath he had not known he was holding. "Thank you, Padre." The old priest smiled. "But you, Hijo, you look like you wrestle bears for breakfast." "They call me Bear, actually." The priest laughed, a sound like rocks tumbling down a mountain. "Apropiado. Very appropriate. But even bears need God sometimes, no?" "I'm not religious, Padre." "God does not mind. He likes bears. He made them, after all." The priest stood, placed a hand on Bear's shoulder. "Go with care, my son. Morrison is dangerous, but you are not alone. Remember that." Bear left the church feeling lighter somehow, as if the old priest's blessing carried weight even for a man who did not believe. But the lightness did not last long. That night, as the moon rose full and cold, Bear prepared to do something that could end with him in jail or dead. Kincaid's office had the evidence they needed. Whitmore was certain. Documents, contracts, letters, the paper trail that would prove everything. All Bear had to do was break in and steal them without getting caught. Ayanna insisted on coming. Bear refused. They argued in whispers in Maria's back room while the cantina closed for the night. "You need someone watching," Ayanna said. Her jaw was set, her eyes fierce. "And if we're both caught, then who tells our story? If you are caught alone, I cannot help you." "Ayanna, I've been alone for 10 years. I know how to move in the dark." "The mountain dark, not town dark. Different predators here." She was right, and he knew it. Finally, he nodded. "All right. But you stay outside. You watch. If anything goes wrong, you run. Get to Whitmore. Tell him everything. Promise me." "I promise nothing, but I will be careful." They left Maria's at 11. The streets were mostly empty. A few drunks stumbled from saloons. A dog barked somewhere. Otherwise, silence. Ayanna led him through back alleys and side streets. She moved like smoke. Barely there. Bear tried to match her silence, but his size made it difficult. Every footstep seemed too loud, every breath too heavy. Kincaid's office sat above the general store. A wooden staircase led up the outside. One window faced the alley. Bear had scouted it earlier in daylight, pretending to browse the store below. "There," Ayanna whispered. She pointed to a ledge that ran along the wall. "Climb there. Window should open." "Should?" "I watched him earlier. He did not lock it. Arrogant men forget small things." His gaze found her. This woman who had spent 7 years memorizing every detail of her prison so that one day she could escape. "You're brilliant. You know that?" In the moonlight he saw her almost smile. "Go. I will watch the street." Bear climbed. The adobe was rough under his hands, easy to grip. The ledge was narrow but solid. He reached the window, tried it. It slid up with barely a sound. Arrogant men indeed. He slipped inside. The office was dark except for moonlight through the dirty window. A desk dominated the room. Filing cabinets lined one wall, and there in the corner, a small iron safe. Bear crossed to it, knelt. The safe was cheap, more show than security. Bear had learned to pick locks when he was young. His father's liquor cabinet. Then later, When he needed to eat and had no money, a few storage sheds in towns he passed through on his way to nowhere. He was not proud of it, but survival made thieves of honest men sometimes. The lock was simple. Tumblers fell into place one by one. Click, click, click. The safe door swung open. Inside were documents, thick stacks of them, contracts, land deeds, letters on expensive paper. Bear started pulling them out, shoving them inside his coat. Then he heard it. Voices. Outside. Coming up the stairs. Bear's heart stopped, then started again, too fast. He looked at the window. Could he make it? Could he climb out before they entered? No. The voices were too close. The key was already turning in the lock. He moved on instinct, behind the filing cabinet, pressing himself flat against the wall, making himself small, controlling his breathing, becoming invisible the way he had learned to become invisible to deer and elk in the forest. The door opened. Lamplight flooded in. 2 men entered. The first was Kincaid. Bear would know that voice anywhere. Smooth, oily, self-satisfied. The second was deeper, rougher. Bear did not recognize it. "Tomorrow we evict that mountain man," Kincaid was saying. "I want that land. Once the railroad comes through, it will be worth 10 times what I'm claiming it for." "What about the Apache woman?" the second man asked. "Morrison's still hunting her." "Let him have her. He's paying me $100 to return her. 50 for each of us, Reeves." Reeves. The sheriff. Of course. They crossed to the desk, their backs to Bear's hiding place. Kincaid rifled through papers. "Need the survey maps. Morrison wants to see them before we present to the railroad investors." "You trust Morrison?" "I trust his money and his connections. With him backing us, we can claim half of New Mexico if we want." They found what they were looking for, started to leave. Bear allowed himself to breathe. Then Reeves stopped. "The safe. It's open." Time crystallized. Bear could see everything. The way Kincaid turned, the lamplight catching his face. The moment recognition hit. Kincaid rushed to the safe, looked inside. His face went from confusion to rage in an instant. "The documents. They're gone. Someone's robbed us." "Who would dare?" "That mountain man. Has to be. He's the only one who knows. Find him. I want him dead." But Bear was already moving, out from behind the cabinet while their backs were turned, to the window, through it, down the wall, his hands finding holds, his body remembering how to fall safely, landing hard but rolling, up and running. Behind him, shouts, footsteps pounding down the stairs. Bear ran, through the alley where Ayanna waited. "Go," he hissed. "Now." She moved instantly, no questions. They split up as planned. Different routes, making it harder to follow. Bear took a winding path through back streets Maria had shown him. Left, right, through a stable yard, over a fence, under a cart. Finally, breathing hard, he reached the back door of the cantina. He slipped inside. Maria was waiting, face pale. Ayanna was already there, trembling slightly but unhurt. "Did you get them?" Ayanna asked. Bear pulled the documents from inside his coat, laid them on the table. "I got them." Maria crossed herself. "Madre de Dios, they will come here. They will search everywhere." "They'll search at dawn," Bear said. "We have a few hours." "Where's Whitmore?" "I sent word," Maria said. "He is coming." Bear looked down at his shoulder. Blood soaked through his shirt. He must have torn it climbing down. The adrenaline had masked the pain. Now it came. Sharp. Burning. Ayanna saw. Her face went hard with concern. "Sit, now." She got her medicine bag, cut away his shirt. The wound was not deep, but it was long. It would scar. Another mark to add to the collection. She cleaned it with something that burned like fire. Bear gritted his teeth, did not make a sound. "You are either very brave or very stupid," Ayanna said as she worked. "Can't it be both?" Despite everything, she almost smiled. "Yes, it can be both." She began wrapping the wound with clean cloth. "You did good tonight, Bear. Reckless, foolish, but good. High praise from you." Her hands stilled for a moment. She looked at him. "You could have run, left me, taken your land and forgotten. But you did not. Why?" Bear was quiet. Then, "Because running's what I've done my whole life. From my father, from the world, from myself. Maybe it's time to stop running. Maybe it's time to stand. Even if standing means dying, especially then." Ayanna finished the bandaging, but she kept her hand on his shoulder, just for a moment, a connection, an acknowledgement. "Thank you, Bear, for standing with me." "Partners," he said simply. "Remember? Partners." Whitmore arrived before dawn. He looked rumpled, hurried, but his eyes were bright with purpose. He spread the documents across Maria's table. Bear, Ayanna, Maria, and the old priest, Padre Miguel, who had come when summoned, all gathered around. For 2 hours they read, sorted, organized, building the case, 15 properties, 15 fraudulent claims, names, dates, amounts, all in Kincaid's own handwriting, and letters from Morrison outlining the scheme, discussing payoffs, discussing what to do with people who resisted. "This is enough," Whitmore said. His voice shook. "This is more than enough. I can take this to Judge Keene today. Request an immediate hearing. He's an honest man. One of the few left. He'll act." "How soon?" Bear asked. 2 days, maybe 3. Keene will want time to review the evidence, but he'll move fast. This is too big to ignore." "What do we do until then?" Maria asked. "Hide?" "No," Bear said. "Hiding makes us look guilty. We go about our business, show we have nothing to fear." "They will try to kill you," Padre Miguel said quietly. "Morrison does not forgive. Kincaid does not forgive. They will come for you both." "Let them try," Ayanna said. Her voice was steel. "I have run enough. I have hidden enough. Now I fight." Bear looked at her, saw the transformation that had happened over these few days. From the broken woman he had found dying in the snow to this, a warrior. Not through violence alone, but through courage. Through choosing to stand when standing was the hardest thing in the world. That afternoon, as Bear walked through the plaza to file the formal complaint with Whitmore, they came. Sheriff Reeves stepped into his path. Behind him, 4 deputies, all armed, all watching Bear like he was a rabid dog that needed putting down. "Caleb Thornton," Reeves said. His voice carried across the plaza. People stopped, turned, watched. "You're under arrest for breaking and entering, for theft, for assault." "Assault?" Bear kept his voice level, calm. "I haven't touched anyone. You assaulted Mr. Kincaid last night, during a robbery. I was asleep in my room last night. Maria Alvarez can testify to that. Maria Alvarez would lie for you. Everyone knows she hates Morrison." Bear smiled without warmth. Funny how truth looks like lies to liars. Reeves's hand went to his gun. "Hands up. You're coming with me." "Am I? On what evidence? On the word of men you're in business with?" A crowd was forming now. Townspeople, shopkeepers, workers, watching this confrontation unfold. Padre Miguel pushed through the crowd. "Sheriff, this man has done nothing. I can vouch for his character." "Stay out of this, Padre. This is law business." "The law?" Ayanna's voice cut through the tension like a blade. She stepped forward, removing her shawl so everyone could see her face, see her Apache features. "Is it law to sell children? Is it law to steal land? Is it law to profit from suffering?" The crowd murmured, whispered. Who was this Apache woman who dared speak so boldly? Kincaid appeared, pushing through the onlookers. His face was red with rage. "That's Morrison's property. That squaw belongs to him." Ayanna turned to face him. For a moment Bear saw fear flicker in her eyes. Then it was gone, replaced by something harder, something unbreakable. "I belong to no one," she said. Her voice rang out across the plaza. "I am Ayanna, daughter of Neshoba, granddaughter of Red Skywalker. I am Apache, and I am free. You're Morrison's slave. He paid for you. No man can buy a soul, not with all the gold in the world. You ran. You're a thief. I took what was mine, my life, my freedom. Those cannot be stolen because they cannot be owned." The crowd was completely silent now. Even Reeves had lowered his hand from his gun. This was more than a legal dispute. This was something primal, something about dignity and humanity and the lines that should never be crossed. Bear stepped forward to stand beside Ayanna. "Sheriff," he said quietly, but his voice carried. "You want to arrest someone? Arrest me. But you're not touching her. Not today. Not ever." Padre Miguel moved to Ayanna's other side. "If you take her, you take me too, and I will testify before God and man about what Morrison has done." Maria pushed through the crowd. "And me. I will tell about the women he has abused, about the lies he has spread, about the evil he has called business." Then something remarkable happened. A man stepped forward. The blacksmith, a huge Mexican with arms like tree trunks. "I stand with them." Another stepped forward. The doctor, an older man with kind eyes. "And I, a woman who ran the general store. I as well." One by one, 10 people stepped forward. Not an army, not even a significant portion of the town, but enough. Enough to show that Bear and Ayanna were not alone. Enough to show that some people still believed in justice. Reeves looked around. His deputies shifted nervously. This was not what they had expected. They had expected a quick arrest, a brief struggle at most. Not this, not the town turning. Finally, Reeves lowered his hand completely. "This isn't over, Thornton. Judge Keene will hear this case. And when Morrison and Kincaid prove their claims, you'll hang." "Then let's go to court," Bear said. "Let's let the judge decide. That's how law is supposed to work, isn't it?" Reeves had no answer. He turned and walked away. His deputies followed. Kincaid lingered, staring at Bear and Ayanna with pure hatred. "You'll pay for this. Both of you. Morrison has powerful friends. Friends in Santa Fe. Friends in Washington. You can't win. You—" "Maybe not," Bear said, "but we'll damn sure try." Kincaid spat at their feet and walked away. The crowd slowly dispersed. But those who had stepped forward remained. They gathered around Bear and Ayanna, offered hands to shake, words of support, promises to testify if needed. The blacksmith, whose name was Diego, gripped Bear's hand hard. "My daughter. Morrison wanted to buy her. She was 12. I refused. He ruined my business. Took me 2 years to recover. I want justice." The doctor, Dr. Fletcher, nodded gravely. "I've treated too many women who came from Morrison's house. Broken bones. Worse. I documented everything. If the court will hear it, I will tell it." One by one they shared their stories. The pattern of abuse, the corruption, the evil that had been allowed to flourish because no one dared to stand against it. Until now. That evening, back at Maria's cantina, Bear sat with Ayanna watching the sun set over the adobe buildings of Taos. His shoulder ached. His whole body ached. But something else stirred in his chest, something he had not felt in 10 years. Hope. "Today," Ayanna said quietly, "people stood with us. I did not expect that." "Neither did I," Bear admitted. "Do you think we can win? Truly?" Bear was quiet for a long time. "I think we already have. Winning isn't just about the verdict. It's about standing up, about refusing to bow, about showing others it's possible." He looked at her. "You did that today. You stood in front of the whole town and declared yourself free. That matters. Whatever happens in that courtroom, that matters. Ayanna nodded slowly. I was afraid. When I saw Kincaid, when I heard his voice, I wanted to run. But you didn't. No, because you were beside me, and Padre Miguel, and Maria, and people I did not even know. I was not alone. You're not alone, Bear said. Not anymore. And neither am I. They sat in comfortable silence as the sky turned from gold to red to purple. Tomorrow Whitmore would formally file charges. The day after, Judge Keene would review the evidence, and soon, very soon, they would face Morrison and Kincaid in court. The fight was not over. It was only beginning. But for the first time, Bear believed they might actually win. Not because they were stronger, not because they were smarter, but because they were no longer alone. And that made all the difference. 3 days of preparation felt like 3 years. Bear and Ayanna stayed close to Maria's cantina, venturing out only when necessary. Whitmore worked day and night, organizing evidence, preparing witnesses, building a case that could not be ignored. The town buzzed with anticipation. Everyone knew something big was coming, something that would change Taos forever. On the morning of the trial, Bear stood in his small room staring at his reflection in a cracked mirror. He had trimmed his beard slightly, though it still fell thick and wild. His hair was tied back neat. He wore his cleanest buckskins. He looked exactly like what he was. A mountain man, rough, hard, honest. He would not pretend to be something else. Ayanna knocked softly on his door. When he opened it, he found her wearing a simple dress Maria had given her. Her long black hair was braided. She stood straight, shoulders back, ready for battle. "Are you afraid?" she asked. "Terrified," Bear admitted. "You?" "More than I have been since the night I ran from Morrison." They looked at each other. Two people who had survived the unsurvivable, who had found each other in a frozen wilderness, who had decided to stop running. "Whatever happens today," Bear said, "you need to know something. You're the bravest person I've ever met, and I'm honored to stand with you." Ayanna's eyes glistened, but she did not cry. She nodded once. Partners to the end. Partners to the end. The courthouse was already packed when they arrived, every bench filled, people standing along the walls, more outside, unable to fit. Word had spread. This was more than a land dispute. This was about justice, about whether the powerful could be held accountable, about whether truth mattered in a world built on lies. Judge Harold Keene sat at the bench. 60 years old, white hair, stern face carved from granite. He was known for two things: absolute fairness and absolute intolerance for nonsense. On one side of the courtroom sat Kincaid and his lawyer, a slick man from Santa Fe with oiled hair and an expensive suit. Behind them sat Morrison, fat and red-faced, radiating barely contained rage. Sheriff Reeves stood nearby, pretending to be impartial but fooling no one. On the other side sat Bear, Ayanna, and Whitmore. Behind them, Padre Miguel, Maria, Diego the blacksmith, Dr. Fletcher, and the others who had stood with them in the plaza. A smaller army, but an army nonetheless. Judge Keene banged his gavel. The room fell silent. "This court is now in session. We are here to examine charges of land fraud brought by Samuel Whitmore on behalf of Caleb Thornton and the people of Taos. Mr. Whitmore, your opening statement." Whitmore stood. His hands trembled slightly, but his voice was steady. "Your Honor, people of Taos, this case is simple. Travis Kincaid and Garrett Morrison have systematically defrauded honest people of their land through false claims, forged documents, and bribery of officials. We have evidence. We have witnesses. We have truth on our side." Kincaid's lawyer stood. His voice was smooth as silk. "Your Honor, this is nothing more than a desperate attempt by squatters and malcontents to avoid lawful eviction. My client followed every legal procedure. These charges are baseless and motivated by spite." Judge Keene nodded. "We'll let the evidence speak. Mr. Whitmore, call your first witness. I called Travis Kincaid to the stand. A murmur ran through the courtroom. Calling the defendant first was unusual, aggressive. It meant Whitmore was confident. Kincaid took the stand, swore the oath, sat with practiced ease. He was not worried. He had done this before. He had won before. Mr. Kincaid, Whitmore began, how many properties have you claimed in the past 2 years? 15, sir, all legal. And how many did you personally survey? All of them. All 15? Whitmore's voice was sharp now. You personally visited each site, measured boundaries, recorded landmarks? Yes. Whitmore picked up a document. Then perhaps you can explain why these records show you were in Santa Fe on 3 of the dates you claim to have been surveying land 200 miles north of here. Kincaid's face tightened. I had assistants. Assistants whose names do not appear anywhere in your filings. Convenient. Objection, Kincaid's lawyer called. Badgering. Sustained. Mr. Whitmore, move on. Mr. Kincaid, what is your relationship with Garrett Morrison? We're business associates. What kind of business? Land development. Perfectly legal. Whitmore held up more papers. Would you call a profit-sharing agreement where you claim land and sell it to Mr. Morrison at inflated prices legal, where he then resells to the railroad at triple the value? That's just good business. Good business or conspiracy to defraud. Objection. Sustained. Jury will disregard. Mr. Whitmore, one more outburst and you'll be held in contempt. But the damage was done. The jury had heard. The crowd had heard. Whitmore pressed on. He pulled out document after document, letters from Morrison discussing the scheme, contracts showing the pattern, bank records proving the profits. Kincaid tried to explain each one, but his explanations grew weaker, his confidence cracked. No further questions, Whitmore said finally. Next came Caleb Thornton. Bear took the stand, his massive frame making the witness chair look like a child's toy. He swore the oath. His voice was deep and steady. Mr. Thornton, Whitmore said, how long have you lived on the land in question? 10 years, sir. Did anyone contest your presence before Mr. Kincaid? No, sir, not once. Did you improve the land, build structures, clear areas for use? Yes, sir. Built a cabin, cleared a garden plot, maintained the area. Did you believe the land was yours? I believed if you work land, live on land, care for land, it becomes yours. I guess I was wrong about the law, but I wasn't wrong about the work. Kincaid's lawyer stood for cross-examination. Mr. Thornton, you never filed legal claim, did you? No. So you're a squatter. I'm a man who lives where no one else wanted to live. If that makes me a squatter, so be it. You broke into my client's office, didn't you? Stole documents? Did I? Don't be coy. You were seen. By who? Someone who was planning to evict me illegally? Someone who profits from theft? That's your witness? Your Honor, Judge Keene leaned forward. Mr. Thornton, answer the question directly. Bear met the judge's eyes. I got those documents legally. Mr. Whitmore can verify they were provided to him through proper channels. It was not quite a lie, but it was close enough that Bear felt the weight of it. The lawyer moved on, tried to paint Bear as a violent mountain man, a danger to society, someone who could not be trusted. But Bear's calm demeanor undercut every accusation. He did not rise to the bait, did not lose his temper, just answered honestly and simply. When Bear stepped down, he caught Ayanna's eye. She nodded slightly. You did well. Then Whitmore said the words that made the courtroom gasp. I call Ayanna to the stand. Ayanna stood, walked to the front. Every eye in the room followed her. An Apache woman testifying against white men. It was almost unheard of. Her word would carry little weight legally. But Whitmore was not playing to the law. He was playing to conscience. She swore the oath, sat, kept her back straight and her eyes forward. Miss Ayanna, Whitmore said gently, Would you tell the court your connection to this case?" Ayanna took a breath. "I am Apache. That land Mr. Kincaid claims was Apache land. Before settlers, before borders. My ancestors lived there, hunted there, buried their dead there. Do you have proof of this?" "I have this." She gestured, and Red Skywalker stood. The old Apache elder walked to the front. He carried a rolled piece of leather, ancient and cracked with age. He unrolled it. On the leather was a map, hand-drawn, showing the mountains, the valleys, the sacred places, showing boundaries that predated any white settlement. "This map is from my grandfather's grandfather," Red Skywalker said in careful English. "It shows Apache land, before any white man came." The courtroom erupted. Judge Keene banged his gavel. "Order! Order in this court!" Kincaid's lawyer jumped up. "Objection! Apache land rights were extinguished by treaty. This is irrelevant." "Your Honor," Whitmore said, "this map proves prior occupancy. It establishes historical claim that should be considered in land disputes." Judge Keene studied the map for a long time. Finally he said, "I'll allow it into evidence. Whether it affects the legal ruling remains to be seen, but it will be considered." Whitmore turned back to Ayanna. "Miss Ayanna, you have another connection to this case, don't you? To Garrett Morrison?" Ayanna's hands clenched in her lap, but her voice stayed steady. "Yes. 7 years ago my father sold me to Morrison. $50. Morrison kept me in his house. Locked room. I was his slave." Morrison leaped to his feet. "Lies! She was a servant. Paid fairly." "Paid?" Ayanna turned to face him. Her voice rose. "You never paid me 1 cent. You beat me when I disobeyed. You treated me like property." "Objection!" Morrison's lawyer was on his feet now, too. "This is slander. This is not relevant to the land case." "It's relevant to character," Whitmore said. "It shows the kind of men we're dealing with. Men who believe people can be owned, who believe power makes right." Judge Keene banged his gavel again. "Everyone sit down. Miss Ayanna, compose yourself. Mr. Morrison, one more outburst and you'll be removed. This court will proceed with order, or it will not proceed at all." Silence fell. Heavy. Tense. Whitmore continued, softer now. "Miss Ayanna, how did you escape?" "I drugged his whiskey. Took a knife. Ran. His men chased me. One stabbed me. I kept running. Into the mountains. Into the snow. I thought I would die free rather than live enslaved. And then? Then Bear found me. He saved my life. He asked nothing in return. He gave me choice. Freedom. Dignity. Things Morrison never gave." She looked at Morrison directly. "You think you owned me, but you never did. You owned my body for 7 years, but my spirit was always free. And now my body is too." The silence in the courtroom was absolute. Even Morrison's lawyer had no response. Padre Miguel stood without being called. "Your Honor, may I speak?" "This is highly irregular, Padre." "I understand, but I must speak. For my conscience. For my soul." Judge Keene sighed. "Make it brief." Padre Miguel walked to the front. He did not sit. He stood, his white beard catching the light from the windows. "I am a priest. I hear confessions. I cannot repeat them, but I can say this. I have seen Ayanna's scars. They are real. They tell a story of years of abuse." He turned to face Morrison. "I have also seen your donations to the church, Senor. The new roof, the bells. I accepted them. I told myself the church needed funds, but blood money does not become holy just because it passes through holy hands. I was wrong to take it. I was wrong to stay silent." He looked at the judge. "I testify that Ayanna speaks truth, and that Morrison is capable of everything she claims." Morrison's face turned purple. "You senile old fool. I'll have you removed. I'll have the bishop hear about this." "Then the bishop will hear truth," Padre Miguel said calmly. "God will judge us both. But today you are judged by man, and it is long overdue." The trial continued through the afternoon, witness after witness. Diego the blacksmith testified about Morrison trying to buy his daughter. Dr. Fletcher testified about the women he had treated from Morrison's house. Maria testified about the rumors, the whispers, the women who came to her cantina seeking shelter. Each testimony built on the last, creating a picture not just of land fraud, but of systematic abuse of power, of evil allowed to flourish because no one had the courage to stand against it. Until now. Finally, as the sun began to set, Judge Keene called for closing arguments. Kincaid's lawyer stood, made a long speech about the sanctity of law, about following proper procedures, about not allowing emotion to override justice. His words were polished, professional, empty. Whitmore stood. He was not a practiced orator, but his words carried weight because they carried truth. Your Honor, people of Taos, this case is not complicated. These men stole land through fraud. They abused people through power. They believed they were untouchable. They were wrong. He held up the documents. The evidence is here, in their own handwriting, in their own words. They convicted themselves. All we did was bring it to light. He looked at the jury. You must decide, not just about land, but about what kind of place Taos will be. A place where power makes right, where the strong prey on the weak, or a place where justice matters, where truth matters, where even a mountain man and an Apache woman can stand before the powerful and be heard. He sat down. The courtroom was silent. Judge Keene looked at his notes for a long time. Finally he spoke. This court will recess for 1 hour while I review the evidence. We will reconvene for my ruling. That hour was the longest of Bear's life. He and Ayanna sat outside the courthouse. Neither spoke. What was there to say? Their fate was in the hands of one man, one judge, one human being trying to do right in a world that made wrong so easy. Maria brought them water. Padre Miguel prayed quietly nearby. The supporters who had testified milled about, nervous, hopeful, afraid. Finally, the hour passed. They filed back inside. Judge Keene sat at his bench. His face was unreadable. He banged the gavel. I have reviewed all evidence presented. I have considered testimony from all witnesses. I have examined the documents provided. This is my ruling. The silence was so complete you could hear breathing. On the matter of land fraud, I find the evidence overwhelming. Mr. Kincaid's claims on the Thornton property are denied. The land is recognized as belonging to Caleb Thornton through right of occupancy and improvement. The courtroom erupted in cheers. Judge Keene's gavel came down hard. I am not finished. Furthermore, I am ordering immediate investigation into all 15 of Mr. Kincaid's land claims. Any property found to be fraudulently obtained will be returned to its rightful owners or claimants. More cheers, more gavel banging. As for Garrett Morrison, the testimony regarding human trafficking is beyond the scope of this court. However, I am issuing a warrant for his arrest. He will be held pending trial on charges of slavery, assault, and conspiracy. Morrison lunged to his feet. You can't do this. I have friends, powerful friends. They'll have your job. Then let them try, Judge Keene said coldly. Sheriff Reeves, arrest Mr. Morrison, now. Reeves hesitated, looked at Morrison, looked at the judge. Everyone in the courtroom held their breath. Would he do it? Would the corrupt sheriff arrest his benefactor? Slowly, Reeves walked toward Morrison, drew handcuffs. Mr. Morrison, you're under arrest. Morrison tried to run, tried to push past people, but Diego the blacksmith stepped into his path. Morrison bounced off the big man like a ball off a wall. Reeves cuffed him. Morrison screamed, threatened, cursed, but he was led away, led to a cell, led to justice. Kincaid tried to slip out during the commotion, but Whitmore called out, Your Honor, Kincaid is attempting to flee. Arrest him too, Judge Keene ordered. Conspiracy charges. He's not going anywhere. And just like that, it was over. The powerful men who had terrorized Taos for years were in chains. The system they had corrupted had turned on them. Justice, so long delayed, had finally arrived. Outside the courthouse, people celebrated. They shook Bear's hand, hugged Ayanna, thanked them for having courage. But Bear felt no triumph, only exhaustion, and something else. Relief. The kind of relief that comes when a long-carried burden finally falls away. Ayanna stood beside him, tears streaming down her face. Not tears of sorrow, tears of release, of freedom, of knowing she would never be property again. Bear put his arm around her shoulders. She leaned into him. Two survivors, two fighters, two friends who had faced the darkness and won. "We did it," she whispered. "No," Bear said. "You did it. You stood up. You spoke truth. You changed everything." "We did it together," she corrected. "Partners." "Partners," Bear agreed. As the sun set over Taos, painting the adobe walls gold and red, Bear realized something. He had come down from his mountain to fight for land, but he had gained something far more valuable. He had gained family. Not blood family, but chosen family. The kind that stands with you when the world stands against you. The kind that matters. And that was worth more than any piece of earth could ever be. The celebration that night at Maria's cantina should have been joyous, and for a few hours it was. Food appeared as if by magic. Diego brought venison from a fresh hunt. Dr. Fletcher contributed bottles of decent whiskey he had been saving. Padre Miguel blessed the gathering with words that felt genuine rather than ceremonial. People laughed. They toasted. They allowed themselves to believe for one evening that justice could actually prevail. Bear sat in the corner, nursing a single glass of whiskey. He was not accustomed to crowds anymore. 10 years alone had made gatherings feel overwhelming. Too many voices. Too many people wanting to shake his hand, to thank him, to tell him their own stories of wrongs that needed righting. Ayanna found him there as the evening deepened. She sat beside him without speaking, just sharing the silence. It was one of the things he appreciated most about her. She understood that sometimes silence was not emptiness, but fullness. "You did not drink much," she observed finally. "Never developed the taste. My father drank enough for both of us." "Wise." She looked at the celebrating crowd. "They are happy, but you are not." "I am," Bear said, just quietly. She studied his face in the lamplight. "You are worried about what comes next." He was. Winning in court was one thing, but Morrison had spoken truth in his rage. He had powerful friends, men in Santa Fe, men in Washington, men who profited from the same corruption that had built Morrison's fortune. "Snakes don't die when you cut off the head," Bear said. "They just grow a new one." "Then we cut that one too," Ayanna said simply. Bear looked at her, at the determination in her eyes, the steel that had been forged in 7 years of captivity and tempered by survival. "You're not afraid?" "I am terrified, but I am also free, and I will not go back. I will die first. It won't come to that. You do not know that." "No," Bear admitted, "but I'll make damn sure it doesn't." They sat together as the party continued around them. Maria brought them plates of food. Padre Miguel joined them briefly, his old eyes tired but peaceful. "You did a good thing today, hijos, both of you. The town will remember." "Will it matter?" Bear asked. "If Morrison's friends come calling?" "Perhaps. Perhaps not. But you showed people it is possible to stand, to fight, to win. That alone is worth remembering." Red Sky Walker approached as the priest departed. The old Apache elder had been silent most of the evening, sitting alone by the fire, smoking his pipe. Now he stood before Ayanna. "Granddaughter of my spirit, if not my blood," he said in Apache. Ayanna translated softly for Bear. "You have honored your ancestors. You have reclaimed what was stolen. Not just land, but dignity, but self. Ayanna bowed her head. Thank you, Elder. But the fight is not over. Morrison's allies will come. They will be angry. They will be dangerous. You must be ready. We will be, Bear said, understanding enough of the Apache words to grasp the meaning. Red Skywalker looked at him. Really looked, seeing past the beard and scars to something deeper. You are a good man, Bear of the Mountain. You could have stayed in your high place, safe, alone. But you chose to come down, to stand with one of the people your people have wronged. That takes courage. Or stupidity, Bear said with a slight smile. Sometimes they are the same thing. The old man placed a weathered hand on Bear's shoulder, then on Ayanna's. You will need each other in the days ahead. The bond you have built is stronger than blood. Honor it. Protect it. It will save you both. He left them then, gathering his blanket and walking out into the night. Niol, the young warrior who had accompanied him, nodded respectfully to Bear and Ayanna before following his elder. The party wound down as midnight approached. People drifted home, promised to stay vigilant, to watch out for each other, to stand together if trouble came. And trouble would come. Bear felt it in his bones. It came 2 nights later. Bear and Ayanna had returned to the cabin. They needed to assess the damage, to reclaim the space that was legally theirs now. The ride up the mountain had been peaceful, almost too peaceful. The forest was too quiet, the birds too still. They arrived at twilight. The cabin stood as Bear had left it, though someone had clearly been there. Footprints in the dirt, the door slightly ajar. Inside, things were disturbed. Not destroyed, just moved, searched, someone looking for something. They were here, Ayanna said. Her hand went to the knife at her belt. Recently, Bear agreed. He checked the cabin thoroughly. Nothing taken, nothing obviously damaged. But the violation was clear. This place had been sanctuary. Now it felt compromised. They built a fire, made dinner from supplies Bear had stored, tried to reclaim the normalcy they had lost, but both of them kept glancing at the windows, at the shadows beyond the firelight. Night fell. Bear took first watch. He sat by the door, rifle across his lap, listening to the mountain. Every sound was amplified, every crack of settling wood, every whisper of wind. His instincts, honed by a decade of survival, screamed that something was wrong. He smelled it before he saw it. Smoke. Not from their chimney. From outside. From multiple sources. He stood. Looked out the window. Torches. 6 of them. Moving through the trees. Coming closer. Ayanna! His voice was sharp, urgent. Fire! They're here! She was up instantly. Grabbed her bow. The Apache bow Red Skywalker had given her. She moved to the back window. The torches formed a circle around the cabin, then stopped. A voice called out. Familiar. Kincaid. Thornton! You made a mistake. You embarrassed powerful men. Now you pay. Bear pushed open the door, stepped out, rifle raised. Kincaid, you're supposed to be in jail. I have friends too, Mountain Man. Friends who posted bail. Friends who want you dead. Then come and try. Kincaid laughed. It was an ugly sound. Why risk my neck? Fire does the job just fine. The torchbearers threw. 6 burning brands arced through the darkness, landed on the cabin roof, on the dry wood walls. Fire caught, spread, fast. Bear ran back inside. The cabin was already filling with smoke. We have to go. Now. Where? Ayanna's eyes watered from the smoke. Into the forest. It's our only chance. I know these woods. They don't. They grabbed what they could. Weapons, a water skin, blankets. Then burst through the back door as the roof began to collapse behind them. Into the darkness. Into the trees. With 6 armed men hunting them. This was Bear's territory. He had spent 10 years learning every trail, every rock, every hidden path. He led Ayanna away from the cabin, deeper into the forest where the trees grew thick and the moonlight barely penetrated. Behind them, Shouts, curses, horses trying to follow but struggling with the terrain. Bear moved fast but careful, avoiding obvious trails, taking routes only someone who knew the land intimately could navigate in darkness. Ayanna followed without question, trusting him completely. They ran for an hour, maybe more. Time lost meaning in the dark. Finally Bear stopped, listened. The pursuit had fallen back, lost them in the trees. "There," Bear whispered, pointing to a rock outcropping. "Cave. Small. Hidden. We can rest there." They squeezed into the narrow opening. Inside, it opened up just enough for two people to sit. Bear positioned himself at the entrance, rifle ready. Ayanna strung her bow, nocked an arrow. They waited, breathing hard, hearts pounding, alive. "You're home," Ayanna said softly. "I am sorry. It's just wood. We'll rebuild. Will we? Or will they just burn it again?" Bear had no answer. She was right. They could rebuild. But unless something changed, Morrison's allies would keep coming, keep attacking, keep trying to drive them away or kill them. As dawn approached, they heard movement. Someone climbing toward the cave. One person, moving carefully but not quietly enough. Bear raised his rifle, waited. A figure appeared, silhouetted against the growing light. Bear's finger tightened on the trigger. "Bear! It's me! Don't shoot!" Neol, the young Apache warrior, stepped into view, hands raised. Bear lowered the rifle. "You alone?" "Yes. Red Skywalker sent me. We heard about the fire, saw the smoke, I tracked you." "They still out there?" "They gave up an hour ago, went back to town. But they will return. Morrison's friends have offered money. $500 for you dead, $200 for the Apache woman." Ayanna laughed bitterly. "I was worth only $50 as a slave, but 200 dead. I am moving up in the world." Neol did not smile. "This is serious. Bounty hunters will come, men who kill for money. You cannot hide forever." "We won't hide," Bear said. "We'll end this. Morrison and Kincaid might be in jail, but their friends aren't. We need to cut off the money. Stop whoever's funding this." "How?" Ayanna asked. Bear thought, remembered the documents, the letters, the names. Morrison's partner, the man in Santa Fe, Senator something. Morrison mentioned him in the letters. He's the real power. Morrison was just the local enforcer. Neol nodded. "Senator Blackwood. Everyone knows. Very powerful, very corrupt. Untouchable." "No one's untouchable," Bear said. "We just need proof. Evidence that ties him to Morrison, to the fraud, to everything." "Where do we get that?" "Morrison's house. If he's in jail, the house is empty. There might be more documents, more evidence." "Or it might be a trap," Ayanna pointed out. "Probably is," Bear agreed. "But it's our only move." They rested through the day in the cave, took turns sleeping, ate the little food they had, planned. That evening, as the sun set, they made their way back down toward Taos, moving carefully, staying off main trails. 3 people against a town that wanted them dead. But they were not alone. As they approached the outskirts of town, figures emerged from the shadows. Diego the blacksmith, Dr. Fletcher, Maria, Padre Miguel, even Whitmore, looking nervous but determined. "We heard what happened," Diego said. His voice was angry. "This is wrong. We came to help." "Too dangerous," Bear said. "You have families, lives. You can't risk them for us." "We already are," Dr. Fletcher said. "By standing with you in court, we declared ourselves. Morrison's friends will come for us too eventually. Better to end this now." Maria stepped forward. "Morrison's house. You plan to search it, yes? I can help. I cleaned there once, years ago. I know the layout." Bear looked at these people, these ordinary people who had decided to be extraordinary. To stand when standing was dangerous. To fight when fighting might mean death. "All right," he said. "But we do this smart. We do this careful. And if things go wrong, you run. Understood?" They nodded, though Bear suspected none of them would actually run if it came to it. Morrison's house sat on the hill overlooking Taos, a monument to wealth built on suffering. 2 stories, adobe and wood, windows dark, gates locked. But gates could be climbed, locks could be picked, and a house that size would have many ways in. They approached at midnight. Bear and Diego went over the back wall first, dropped into the garden, waited, listened. Nothing. They opened the gate from inside. The others came through. Maria led them to a servant's entrance. The lock was simple. Whitmore picked it with surprising skill. "Former life," he whispered when Bear looked at him questioningly. "I wasn't always respectable." Inside, the house was dark but not empty. They could hear snoring from upstairs. Someone was here. A guard. Maybe more than one. Maria led them to Morrison's study, a large room lined with books he had probably never read, a massive desk covered in papers, filing cabinets along one wall. "Here," she whispered. "He kept everything here. He was arrogant. Thought no one would dare look." They split up. Diego watched the door. Padre Miguel kept watch at the window. The rest searched. Bear found the safe, larger than Kincaid's, more expensive, but still pickable. His hands worked the tumblers, feeling for the clicks, the alignments. 10 minutes. 15. Sweat ran down his back despite the cool night air. Click. The safe opened. Inside were documents, stacks of them, letters from Senator Blackwood, contracts detailing payoffs, plans to expand the land scheme across 3 territories, names of other officials involved, judges, marshals, politicians. This was bigger than Morrison, bigger than Kincaid. This was a network, a conspiracy that reached into the highest levels of government. Bear grabbed it all, stuffed papers into a sack Maria had brought. Then they heard it. Footsteps, coming down the stairs. The guard had woken. "Time to go," Bear whispered urgently. They moved toward the door, but it was too late. The guard appeared, a big man with a shotgun. He saw them, raised the weapon. "Thieves, stop!" Ayanna moved. Her bow was already strung. Arrow knocked. She released. The arrow flew true, hit the shotgun, knocked it from the guard's hands. He lunged for it. Diego intercepted him. The 2 big men crashed together, wrestling, grunting, the sound echoing through the house. "Go!" Diego shouted. "Get out! I'll hold him!" "No!" Bear started back, but Ayanna grabbed his arm. "We must go. The documents are more important. If we are caught, all of this was for nothing." She was right. Bear hated it, but she was right. They ran, out the back, over the wall, into the darkness. Behind them more shouts, lights coming on. Diego appeared 5 minutes later, bloody nose, ripped shirt, but grinning. "Hit harder than he looked, but I hit harder." They scattered, different directions, different routes, meeting place agreed upon. Maria's cantina at dawn. Bear and Ayanna made their way through back streets. Every shadow a potential threat, every sound a possible pursuer. But they made it, just as the first light touched the mountains. Inside Maria's, they spread the documents on tables, read by candlelight, and what they read made them sick. The conspiracy went deeper than they had imagined. Not just land fraud, but also water rights stolen, mining claims falsified, entire Apache villages forcibly relocated so their land could be seized, all orchestrated by Senator Blackwood, all funded by Eastern investors who cared nothing for the human cost. Morrison was just one piece, a local enforcer in a much larger machine. "This is enough," Whitmore said. His face was pale. "This is more than enough. We can take this to the territorial governor, to federal marshals, to anyone who will listen." "Will they listen?" Ayanna asked. "Or are they part of it too?" "Some are," Whitmore admitted, "but not all. There are still honest men. We just have to find them." "Then we keep fighting," Bear said. "We keep exposing. We keep pushing until someone listens." He looked around the table, at these people who had risked everything, who had become family. Whatever comes next, we face it together. All of us. No one fights alone anymore. They nodded, united, determined, ready for whatever came next. Because the war was not over. It had only escalated. But they were no longer just two people fighting for a piece of land. They were a community fighting for justice. And that was something worth dying for. But more importantly, it was something worth living for. 2 months passed. Spring came to the Sangre de Cristo Mountains with the gentleness of a whispered promise. Snow melted. Streams ran full and clear. The aspens budded green. And on the land that the court had recognized as Bear's, a new cabin rose. Not just Bear building this time. Diego brought timber. Dr. Fletcher brought nails he had ordered from Santa Fe. Maria organized crews of townspeople who came up the mountain on weekends to help. Even Padre Miguel made the journey, blessing each corner post as it went into the ground. Neol and 3 other young Apache warriors came too. They showed Bear and the others the old way of building, how to position a structure to withstand winter winds, how to align it with the sun for warmth, how to make a house that belonged to the land rather than sitting on top of it. The new cabin was larger than the old one, 2 bedrooms this time, a main room for gathering, a separate space for storing medicines and herbs, because Ayana had begun teaching. Apache women came to learn from her. Settler women too, young girls who wanted to understand healing, who wanted knowledge that had nearly been lost. Bear watched it all with quiet satisfaction. This was not just his cabin anymore. It was becoming something else. A meeting place, a neutral ground where Apache and settler could work side by side, where old enemies could begin the slow work of becoming neighbors. One afternoon, as Bear was notching logs for the roof, Ayana came to him with concern written on her face. "Someone is coming," she said, "from the Apache camp, running." They both stopped working, watched. A young woman appeared on the trail, barely 15, face bruised, dress torn. She stumbled the last few yards and collapsed. Ayana reached her first, knelt beside her. The girl spoke in rapid Apache. Ayana's face went hard, then soft with compassion, then hard again with anger. She looked up at Bear. "Her name is Kaya. Her father beats her, drinks whiskey, sold her mother's wedding jewelry for liquor. Now he plans to sell Kaya to a trader. 14 years old. He will sell her like livestock." Bear felt something cold settle in his chest. The same cold he had felt when he learned about Ayana's past, about Morrison, about all the casual evil that people inflicted on each other and called it business or tradition or simply the way things were. "She stays here," Bear said. Not a question, a statement. "Her father will come," Ayana warned. "Let him." They brought Kaya inside the partially finished cabin. Ayana cleaned her wounds, fed her, gave her one of her own dresses. The girl ate like she had not eaten in days. Probably she had not. As evening fell, they came. Kaya's father and 2 of his drinking companions. All 3 were drunk, weaving as they walked, shouting. Bear stepped out to meet them. Ayana stood behind him. Neol and the other Apache warriors who had been helping with the building emerged from the trees. They did not draw weapons, but their presence was clear. "You have my daughter," Kaya's father slurred in Apache. Ayana translated. "Give her back." "No," Bear said simply. "She is mine, my blood, my property." "She's not property. She's a person, and you don't deserve her." The father lunged forward. Bear did not move. The man was drunk and slow. Bear caught his wrist, held it, looked into his bloodshot eyes. "You can hit me if you want," Bear said quietly. Ayana translated. "I'm big enough to take it, but you're not touching her. Not today. Not ever again." The father tried to pull free. Could not. Bear's grip was iron. A decade of splitting wood and hauling logs had made him strong in ways city men could never be. Neol stepped forward, spoke in Apache. His voice was not loud, but it carried authority. "Brother, you shame yourself. You shame your daughter. You shame all Apache. Leave now, while you still can." The father looked around, saw the warriors, saw Bear's unwavering stance, saw that he had no support here. Even his drinking companions were backing away. He spat at Bear's feet. "Keep her then. She is worthless anyway." "No," Ayanna said, speaking for the first time. Her voice cut through the mountain air like a blade. "She is priceless, as was I, as is every woman you and men like you have treated as less than human. Your shame is not hers to carry. It is yours, and you will carry it until you die." The father stared at her, recognized her. His eyes widened. "You are Neshoba's daughter, the one who escaped Morrison." "I am Ayanna. I am no one's daughter but my own now." "And Kaya will be the same. She will choose her own path, make her own life. And if you come here again, these warriors will ensure you regret it." The father looked at the circled men, at their hard faces, at the protection they offered. He turned and stumbled away. His companions followed. They disappeared into the trees. Kaya came out of the cabin. She had been watching, listening. Tears ran down her face, but she was not sobbing. She walked to Ayanna, fell to her knees, spoke in Apache. "She says thank you," Ayanna translated. "She says she thought she would die. Now she wants to live." Bear felt something crack open in his chest, some place that had been frozen for too long. He knelt too, looked at this girl who reminded him so much of himself at 15, broken, scared, desperate. "You're safe now," he said. Ayanna translated. "You can stay as long as you need. Learn what Ayanna teaches. Find your own strength. And when you're ready, you can choose your own life." Kaya nodded, wiped her eyes. Then to Bear's surprise, she reached out and took his hand, held it. A gesture of trust from someone who had every reason not to trust. Over the following weeks, Kaya stayed. She learned quickly. Medicine, sewing, cooking, reading and writing, which Ayanna had learned from missionaries as a child and now passed on. The girl was smart, quick, eager to absorb everything. Bear taught her too. How to fish, how to track, how to read the mountain's moods, how to be self-sufficient. Not because she would need these skills necessarily, but because knowing she could take care of herself would give her confidence, would remind her that she did not need anyone to survive. One evening, as the three of them sat around the fire in the completed cabin, Kaya asked a question. "Why do you help people like me?" she asked in halting English. She was learning fast. "You could live alone, be safe. Why bring trouble?" Bear looked at Ayanna. She looked back, a understanding passing between them that needed no words. "Because someone helped me once," Bear said finally. "When I was lost in the snow of my own making. And that help changed everything. Not just my circumstances, but who I was, who I could become." He poked at the fire with a stick, watched the sparks rise. "I spent 10 years alone on this mountain. I told myself I was free, but I wasn't. I was just hiding, running from a world that had hurt me. Ayanna taught me something. She taught me that real freedom is not running away. It's standing your ground. It's fighting for what's right. It's helping others find their own freedom." Ayanna added softly, "We help because we know what it is to need help. We protect because we know what it is to be unprotected. We stand because too many people are forced to kneel. It is simple, and it is everything." Kaya nodded, absorbed this, then said, "I want to help too. When I am strong enough. I want to help others like me." "You will," Ayanna promised. "This cabin, this place, it will be here, for anyone who needs it, for as long as we live." And so it became, a refuge, a sanctuary. Over the months and years that followed, others came. Apache women fleeing abuse, settler women escaping cruel husbands, children with nowhere else to go. They came, they stayed, they healed, and then they went back into the world stronger than before. Bear and Ayanna never married. It was not that kind of bond. It was deeper than romance, purer than passion. They were partners in the truest sense, each holding up the other, each making the other stronger, a friendship forged in survival and tempered in justice. The documents they had stolen from Morrison's house made their way through official channels. Whitmore ensured they reached an honest federal marshal, then a territorial judge with integrity, then a newspaper editor in Santa Fe who printed everything. The scandal broke like a summer storm. Senator Blackwood was indicted. Morrison and Kincaid received additional sentences. Sheriff Reeves was removed from office and jailed. 3 judges were investigated. 2 were found guilty of bribery. It did not fix everything. Corruption had roots too deep to pull out completely. But it sent a message that even powerful men could fall, that evidence and courage and persistence mattered, that justice, though often delayed, was not dead. Bear became a figure of local legend, the mountain man who came down to fight tyranny, who stood with the oppressed, who could not be bought or intimidated. People came from other territories to consult with him, to ask for help with their own battles against land grabbers and corrupt officials. He helped when he could, offered advice, shared what he had learned, but he never left the mountain for long. This was home, this land, this cabin, this life he had built with Ayanna and their growing family of rescued souls. 5 years passed. The cabin expanded again. More rooms, a barn, a garden that produced enough food to feed a dozen people. Apache and settlers worked the land together, learned from each other, built something new. Bear was 37 now. His beard was still thick but shot with gray. His body was still strong but bore the marks of hard living. Scars, old injuries that ached in cold weather, but his eyes were peaceful, no longer the eyes of a man running from his past, the eyes of a man at peace with his present. One autumn evening, as the aspens turned gold and the air carried the first hint of winter, a rider came. A young man, maybe 25, face bruised, eyes haunted. He dismounted slowly, painfully, and approached the cabin. Bear came out to meet him, saw the familiar signs, the way the young man held himself, the wariness, the desperate hope fighting with desperate fear. "Help you, friend?" Bear asked. "I heard about this place," the young man said. His voice was rough, unused. "Heard about a man named Bear who helps people, who gives them a second chance. What's your name?" "Ben. Ben Cooper." "What brings you here, Ben?" Ben's jaw worked, trying to find words for things that had no easy words. Finally he said, "My father. He beat me for years. I finally fought back. Nearly killed him. Had to run. Been running for 3 days. No food, no water, no place to go. Then someone in Taos said to find you." Bear stepped forward, placed a hand on Ben's shoulder. The young man flinched but did not pull away. "You're safe now," Bear said. "Come inside. We'll get you fed, get you rested, and then we'll figure out what comes next. Together." Ben's eyes filled with tears. "Why? Why would you help me? You don't know me." "Because someone helped me once," Bear said, "when I needed it most, and I learned that help is not something you hoard, it's something you pass on." He guided Ben toward the cabin. Ayanna stood in the doorway, Kaya beside her, now 19 and teaching medicine to younger girls. Both women saw Ben, saw his need, understood immediately. "We have room," Ayanna said, "and food, and time. Stay as long as you need." That night they sat around the fire. Bear, Ayanna, Kaya, Ben, and 3 other young women who were learning healing arts. They shared food, told stories, listened to Ben's story without judgment, offered not pity, but understanding. Months passed. Ben's bruises faded faster than his wounds inside. But slowly, with Ayana's gentle guidance and Bear's steady presence, he learned how to wake without flinching, how to speak without bracing for a blow, how to believe he was worth more than the names his father had called him. A year later, when another young man arrived at the cabin, face swollen and spirit broken, Ben was the first to step forward. "I know what you're feeling," Ben said to the newcomer, his voice steady now. "The fear doesn't leave all at once, but it does leave. Let me show you how." Bear watched from the doorway, saw the circle completing itself once more, the saved becoming the savior, the broken learning to heal others. That was when he knew with certainty that the work would continue long after he was gone. And Bear realized something. This was what he had been running toward all those years ago when he fled into the mountains. Not solitude, not escape, but this: community, purpose, family. Not family by blood, but family by choice, by shared suffering transformed into shared strength, by the simple act of helping others find what you yourself once found. Years continued to pass. Bear grew older. His hair went fully gray. His body slowed, but his spirit remained strong. Ayana aged beside him, still teaching, still healing, still fierce when fiercer was needed, and gentle when gentleness served better. They saved dozens of people over the years, maybe more. It was hard to keep count. People came. People healed. People left to build their own lives. Some came back to help others. Some sent others who needed help. The circle grew. The land between the cabin and the Apache reservation became recognized as shared territory, a place where old boundaries did not apply, where Apache and settler could meet as equals, could trade, could talk, could slowly, painfully, begin to heal generations of wounds. Red Skywalker passed away when Bear was 42. The old Apache elder went peacefully in his sleep, but before he died, he visited the cabin one last time, sat with Bear and Ayana. "You have built something good here," he said. "Not just a home, but a bridge. My people and your people, they need many bridges. This is one. Guard it well." "We will," Bear promised. "And know this. My granddaughter would have been about Ayana's age. She died young, disease from the reservation, bad water, bad food, broken promises." The old man's eyes grew distant. "I see her in Ayana, the woman she might have become, strong, wise, a healer." He placed his hand on Ayana's head, a blessing. "You have made an old man's heart glad. You have honored the ancestors. You have shown that survival is not enough. We must also live with meaning, with purpose, with love." He left that day, died 2 weeks later. They buried him in the Apache way on land his people had held for generations. Bear and Ayana attended, honored, grieved, remembered. When Bear was 45, Ayana fell ill, not suddenly, but gradually. A cough that would not leave, weight that fell away, strength that faded. Dr. Fletcher came, did what he could, but some illnesses were beyond medicine. The body simply wore out, used up its allotment of years. Ayana faced death the way she had faced life, with dignity, with courage, with quiet determination to make every remaining moment count. She taught Kaya everything she knew, passed on not just technique but philosophy, how to see patients as whole people, how to treat not just bodies but spirits, how to give hope even when outcomes were grim. One evening, as winter settled over the mountains, Ayana called Bear to her bedside. She could barely sit up now, but her eyes were still fierce, still clear. "I need to tell you something," she said. "Save your strength." "No, this must be said." She took his hand. Her grip was weak, but her intent was strong. "When you found me in the snow, I was ready to die. I had given up. I thought death was the only freedom left to me. I know. But you showed me different. You showed me that freedom was not dying. It was choosing to live, choosing to fight, choosing to matter. You gave me 10 years I would not have had, 10 years of purpose, of meaning, of love. Bear's eyes stung. You gave me more. You gave me a reason to come down from the mountain, to rejoin the world, to be human again. We saved each other then. Yes. And now you must save others. Promise me. Promise you will keep this place open, keep it safe, keep helping those who need help. I promise. And Bear, when I am gone, do not mourn long. Celebrate instead. Celebrate that we found each other, that we fought together, that we won. We did win, didn't we? Yes. Against all odds, against powerful men, against a world that wanted us broken, we stood, we fought, we won. She smiled. That is worth celebrating. She died 3 days later, peacefully. In the cabin they had built together, surrounded by people who loved her. They buried her on the ridge between the cabin and the Apache lands, where she could watch over both worlds, Apache and settler, past and future, pain and healing. Bear stood at her grave for a long time, not crying, just remembering all the moments, all the battles, all the quiet evenings by the fire, all the lives they had changed together. Kaya came to stand beside him. She was 24 now, a skilled healer, a teacher in her own right. "What will you do?" she asked. "What we promised. Keep this place open, keep helping, keep her legacy alive." "And your legacy?" Bear smiled slightly. "I don't have one. This was always hers. I was just helping." "No," Kaya said firmly. "It was both of yours, together, and now it is all of ours. Everyone who was helped here, everyone who learned here, everyone who found hope here. We carry it forward." She was right. The work did not end with Ayana's death. If anything, it expanded. More people came, more were helped, more learned to help others. Bear continued for another 5 years, growing older, growing tired, but never growing bitter, never losing faith in the work. When he was 50, a young woman arrived at the cabin. She was Apache, maybe 16, pregnant, terrified. Her family had cast her out. The father of the child had abandoned her. She had nowhere to go. Kaya took her in immediately, gave her a room, food, safety, and Bear saw it, the circle completing itself again, the helped becoming the helper, the saved becoming the savior. He realized then that his work was done, not finished, never finished, but his part was complete. He had been the spark, Ayana had been the fuel. Together they had built a fire, and now that fire was self-sustaining. Others would tend it, would feed it, would ensure it never went out. One spring morning, Bear woke and knew. His time was short. Something in his chest had shifted, some internal clock winding down. He was not afraid. He was ready. He spent the day visiting his favorite places on the mountain. The ridge where he had found Ayana, the creek where he had caught his first trout, the meadow where deer came to graze. All the places that had been home for 18 years. That evening he gathered everyone at the cabin. Kaya, Ben, who had stayed and become a teacher of survival skills, the young women learning medicine, the handful of Apache warriors who served as protectors. "I won't be here much longer," he said simply. "My body knows. So I want to say this while I still can." He looked at each face, saw the protest forming, raised his hand gently. "Listen, please. What we built here, what Ayana and I started, it matters. Not because we were special, but because we decided suffering could become strength, that pain could become purpose, that being broken could make us better at helping others heal." He gestured to the cabin, to the land, to everything they had created. "This place is not mine. It never was. It belongs to everyone who needs it. Everyone who comes here broken and leaves whole. Everyone who finds hope when hope seemed lost." He looked at Kaya. You understand this. You came here broken. Now you heal others. That is the legacy. Not buildings, not land, but people helping people. That is what matters. Kaya was crying. You cannot leave. We still need you. No, you need each other. I was just the beginning. You are the continuation, and there will be others after you. The fire keeps burning. That is enough. 2 days later, Bear died in his sleep, peacefully, in the cabin he had built, surrounded by the family he had chosen. They buried him next to Ayana, on the ridge, where he could watch over the land he had loved, the people he had saved, the legacy he had built. And the work continued. The cabin stood. The healing happened. The broken came and left whole, year after year, generation after generation. Eventually, the land became protected territory, recognized by the government as a sanctuary, a place where Apache and settler had proven they could coexist, could cooperate, could build something better than what had been. The story of Bear and Ayana became legend, told around fires, written in books, passed down through families, not always accurate, but always true in the ways that mattered. And sometimes on quiet evenings when the wind whispered through the aspens, people swore they could feel them. The mountain man and the Apache woman, still watching, still protecting. The story of Bear and Ayana became legend, not always accurate in the details, but always true in what mattered. A mountain man who learned to stand. An Apache woman who refused to kneel. 2 broken people who saved each other, then saved countless others. Their names were spoken with respect, with gratitude, with love. Not because they were perfect, but because they were real, because they proved that kindness, once planted, never dies. It only grows, spreading from person to person, heart to heart, generation to generation. On the ridge between 2 worlds, 2 simple graves stood side by side. No grand monuments, no carved speeches, just their names and one line. They stood when the world told them to kneel. That was their legacy, not carved in stone, but written in every life they touched, in every person who found shelter in that cabin, in every broken soul who learned to stand again. The fire they built still burns, and it always will.